Welcome to We Learn, Virtual Learning Network. This is session number 13th of the subject, the study of society, and the chapter is production processes. The topics to be covered are economic organization, the economist's point of view, production and social factors, technology and production, Max Weber's views, Emil Durkheim's views, and reconsideration. So what is economic organization? It is defined as the human behavior by which goods are produced, allocated, distributed, and consumed. Economic organization in one form or another is a functional prerequisite to the survival arid continuity of every human society. The simple tribal societies and the peasant societies have some basic difference from the monetized, market-oriented, or state-directed and industrialized societies of today. So basically, economic organization is defined as a human behavior where goods are produced, distributed, consumed, and also it is a prerequisite to the survival of any and every human society. So basically, it is an organization where human beings live. They earn for their living and they survive by their earning, and they consume the goods which are produced by a particular entity. The economist's point of view, economists define production as the process by which land, labor, and capital are combined to produce articles needed for daily consumption, and the machines, components of machines, and raw materials which are in turn required to produce the articles of daily consumption. Land refers literally to the land for agricultural activity or land on which a workshop or a factory needs to be erected. So basically, economists define production as a process where land is there, labor, capital, these things are combined to produce the articles which are needed for daily consumption, and the machines, raw materials, and the components of machines which are there to required to produce the articles of daily consumption. Land refers to basically wherein a structure of a factory, an industry which can be erected. Labor refers to the work that is put in by laborers. It is labor which rises machinery and raw materials to produce what the people in a society want. The machinery and raw materials refer to the capital that is required in production. Land, labor, and capital are regarded as the important factors of production, and the behavior of each of these factors need to be studied in order to discover the laws of production. So there has to be, for the successful cause and for the successful result, land, labor, capital, and human beings have to be there to ensure that everything is in a smooth, and also the work is done in a smooth manner, so that whatever the work is there, that is completed. Labor is a human component in the process of production, but by assuming that a unit of labor can be treated as equivalent to another unit of labor, like machines and tools, they overlooked some of the crucial social and human problems that crop up in the task of increasing production. This way, the sociologists paid attention to the social factors that affect production, which were by and large ignored by economists. Production and social factors. Production is affected by social factors because production itself is a social activity. In the process of manufacturing a certain article or growing food grains, people enter into definite relationships with each other. The Mundas are now regarded as a scheduled tribe by the government of India. Every season, the land used for cultivation earlier was left fallow, and a new plot was prepared by the same procedure. So basically, in the process of manufacturing, doing the work and manufacturing various food grains, people also enter into definite relationships with each other, and also production is affected by these social relations and social factors. The Khund Katedars now had to acknowledge the Jagirdars and kings to whom they had to pay annual rents and tributes, thereby restricting the Mundas' rights and impoverishing them considerably. In Tehri Gharwal district of Uttaranchal, a labourer usually belonging to the untouchable castes of Doms and Koltas borrows a small sum of money from a landowner in order to get married, and subsequently becomes bonded to his landowner money or the money lender. So this is what happens. Social aspects of production. Production is not only as a social activity but also a socially defined activity. In a way, it is a society which determines what production is or is not. Production involves producing so many objects that is considered to be valuable by a society. The object that is considered valuable is called a product. A product has value in use and value in exchange. Value in use or use value refers to the value that one derives from using a thing or object. So basically, production is a social activity and it also involves products and using the products and the value one derives from using that product or thing or object, that includes in the social aspects. Services and production. Adam Smith, who is regarded as the father of modern economics, wrote in his book Wealth of Nations, published in 1776, that only those who are engaged in the production of goods are productive. To ignore the services of scientists, researchers, teachers, politicians and such others is to overlook the obvious fact that research, teaching and the framing of proper economic and political policies for the country may substantially contribute to the task of increasing a nation's production. So basically, to improvise on research, teaching, to include scientists, researchers, teachers, and also in the production of goods and services will thereby increase the nation's production. Women and production. Even when services are considered, some services are not included in the definition of production. Many economists point out that the method of calculation of a country's total production in a given year ignores the contribution of women. Women who work on a variety of domestic chores, right from helping their menfolk in agriculture to cooking, washing and nurturing children, are treated as dependents, not workers. So the role of women is not considered important in the production process because they are involved in the variety of domestic chores and their contribution is not considered important enough. Technology and production. In the description of production given above, what is missing is a mention of the technological aspects. The level of production in a society and the variety of goods and services available will depend on the kinds of tools and machines used. Knowledge of how to build machines and improve their performance and the availability of trained technicians and engineers is thoroughly required. The level of production in any society depends on the technology that is available and on the social relationships and values of that society. So basically, it depends the level of production, the level of output in any society depends upon the technology, the machinery, the capital, the labor which is used, and also the relationships, the human values which are instilled, which are cultivated, which are known in that society. If we refer to the social structure and if we regard the values as components of the culture of that society, we can say that production is influenced by technology, social structure, and the culture wherein the people reside. Karl Marx's views. Karl Marx's name is associated with the Russian Revolution in 1917 and the spread of communist movement in Eastern Europe, China, Vietnam, Cuba, and other countries. Karl Marx wrote on the dominant social and political questions that preoccupied the intellectual and political circles of Europe during his lifetime. The contemporary social scientists and intellectuals of his time did not recognize his contributions to the understanding of social and economic changes in Europe. So basically, he focused on the relationships between the rulers and the ruled, the haves and the have-nots, and characterized economic factors of production behind all the problems of society. Material forces of production. Marx gave importance to what he called the material forces of production and relations of production in explaining the changes that occur in the society. The printing press or the steam engine could be developed. A time comes when their further development comes in conflict with the prevailing social order. Marx uses the term social order as a substitute for what he calls relations of production. Social order, the society, the relationships between people, the relationships, the material forces of production and relations of production wherein different elements and different human beings react in a society. The capitalist owns the machines which are the means of production and hires laborers to work on his capital. The laborers are hired themselves out to the capitalist because they do not any longer own the means of production and they are only free to sell their labor in the market. Many regards that the relations of production, especially the relations between capital and labor, are the last antagonistic or conflicting relations. So basically, the relations between the capital, the place where they are working, the machinery, and the people, that is antagonistic, that is always conflicting. They do not agreeable, they do not have amiable relations because one particular class owns the means of production and always exploits the class who are the laborers or who are the working class. They exploit them, and the working class are not happy to work there, and he says that they must wage a revolution to snatch the power and give it to the state. Economic structure. Marx considers that the forces of production together with the relations of production constitute the economic infrastructure of society. In this economic structure, that is a foundation on which legal, political and social structure or superstructure of the society is built. So it is this economic structure. Economic structure is the base on which legal, political and social structure or superstructure of the society is built. The foundation of building is not visible, but it is very important to decide how many stories the building can have, the length and width of building and the thickness of its walls. So basically it says that the foundation of building is not visible, but the stories, the length and width of the building, that is visible to the people. Max Weber's views. Max Weber was a leading German sociologist who wrote extensively on not only European societies but also on China, India and Japan. He too was interested in the problems with which Marx was concerned and took it upon himself to show that the relationship between the economic structure and the social institutions and ideas could be seen in reverse. Capitalism in Europe. To demonstrate his point, Weber takes as his problem the origin and development of capitalism in Europe. He points out that at the time of the origin of capitalism in Europe, there were two other great civilizations which were in some ways more advanced than Europe. One way of assuring oneself, that is, among the elect, is to engage intensively in worldly activities, devotedly working at one's calling or a task in life that one has been divinely allocated. So basically, one should assure oneself that one should be engaged in worldly activities and one should be doing one's task which is divinely given to it. Mere engagement in one's calling or a task in life that one has been divinely allocated, one has to also make sure of success in the calling by working methodically at it. So these Protestants believed that any time spent in lazing or relaxation is time wasted from being utilized in working for the greater glory of God. Living in luxury is to practice self-indulgence and being distracted from God's work. So basically, mere engagement in one's calling or a task in life that one has been allocated, one has to also gain success in that by working methodically at it, and also one should not laze or relax but should be involved in God's work. Ideas and values. Weber regards the ideas and values as often being critical in supporting a particular system of production. Weber also considered the role of technology and the relationship between capitalists and the workers, but what he found remarkable about both technology and production was the principle of rationality on the basis of which they were organized. So the principle of rationality, the principle of logic on which technology and production both and human relations were also organized. Technology gets rationalized in a modern factory by developing standardized parts and by dividing work into routine and repetitive actions. So basically technology gets rationalized in a modern factory by dividing the work into routine or repetitive or the new actions. The relationship between the capitalist and the worker is rationalized by the organization of work. Weber finds that this rationality not only deprives the worker alone in an industrial unit from the means of a production, but deprives the officer. Worker also forms the means of his production. The worker continues to perform repeated monotonous tasks to keep up with the rhythm of machine work. So the worker also at the end of the day becomes fed up with his or her work because he performs repeated monotonous tasks which are not aligned with his happiness. Emil Durkheim's views. Durkheim was the leading French sociologist who was a contemporary of Max Weber. Like Weber, Durkheim also tried to come to terms with Marx's thought, but his major concerns were different from the major issues of Marx's thought. Durkheim was interested in the problems of morality and social order. Mechanical solidarity is a solidarity which comes from likeness, and in these societies, the collective conscience of society envelops the individual members of that society. In industrial societies, solidarity is based not on uniformity but on differences. In these societies, the legal system is of the restitutive type, where reform of the criminal is aimed at rather than the satisfaction of the society. So reconsideration. The whole world can now be seen as an integrated economy. Societies which have not developed modern production systems of their own can import the products of modern technology. And some societies which were till recently working with primitive technologies and continuing with traditional social customs have been forcibly sucked into the vortex of modernization processes because of the integration of markets. So because of the integration of markets, because of the integration of markets into the mainstream, the modernization process has started, into which the societies are merged, and the people who are working with the primitive technologies, they are removed and they are told to come into the umbrella of modernization. So that was all in this session for you. These are some of the questions. You have to do it yourself. What is the relationship between services and production? Question number 2. Describe Karl Marx's views on technology and production. Thank you. Happy learning. We learning.